My biological mother abandoned me at age 4. 21 years later, she returns begging to reconnect. But it was all a lie to get my kidney. When I refused, she tried to destroy my career and life. I left her speechless. I'm 25 years old, work in tech as a software developer, and I'm engaged to the most incredible woman in the world, Rachel. But I need to tell this story because what happened a few months ago literally made me question everything I thought about family, blood, and how far someone can go when they're desperate. The thing is, my biological mother, Catherine, abandoned me when I was 4 years old, and after 20 years of knowing nothing about her, she suddenly appeared in my life wanting to reconnect. But it turns out the whole thing was a giant lie to manipulate me and get something from me that I never imagined. And when I say it was a lie, I mean this woman planned everything with a coldness that still makes me feel sick when I think about it. I guess I should start at the beginning, when I was 4 years old and we lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. I don't remember much from that time. Honestly, my memory is fuzzy, like random images without much sense. But what, they told me later, is that one day Catherine simply left me with the neighbors in the building, told them she'd be back in a few hours, and never came back. Just like that, no more. She disappeared completely as if I had never existed. The neighbors called social services after 3 days of waiting, and that's when the whole legal and bureaucratic process started that eventually ended with me being adopted by my Aunt Patricia, the younger sister of my biological dad who had died in a car accident when I was like 2 years old. Aunt Patricia, or as I call her, simply Mom, was the person who raised me from that moment on. And together with my grandparents and my cousin Nathan, who's 2 years older than me, they gave me the most incredible family anyone could ask for. Nathan and I grew up like brothers. You know, fighting over video games, sharing a room when we went to Grandma and Grandpa's house in the summer, that kind of thing. I never felt like I was missing anything, honestly, because Mom made sure I had all the love and support a kid needs. She took me to my soccer games, helped me with my math homework even though she hated math, bought me my favorite science fiction books. Basically, she was the best mother in the world. The funny thing is, I didn't know I was adopted until I turned 18. Mom thought it was the right time to tell me the truth, and she did it in the most loving way possible. Sat me down in the living room on a Saturday afternoon and explained the whole story in detail. How Catherine had abandoned me, how she had fought legally to adopt me, everything. I remember I asked her if she knew where Catherine was now, and Mom simply shook her head and told me that after the abandonment we never heard from her again, that she basically evaporated. I'm not gonna lie, it was a hard blow to find that out at 18, like right when I was starting college and thinking about my future. But the truth is, it didn't change anything between Mom and me. Because to me, she always was and always will be my real mother, period. The next few years were pretty normal. I finished my degree in computer science, got a good job at a tech company that pays well, met Rachel 3 years ago at a networking event, and we got engaged like 6 months ago. Life was going amazing. We bought an apartment together last year, adopted a cat we named Pixel because we're nerds, and we were planning the wedding for next summer. Everything was perfect, stable, happy, you know? And then came the Facebook message. It was a normal Tuesday. I was at the office reviewing code when I saw the notification. A message request from Catherine Morrison. The name didn't mean anything to me at first, but when I opened the message and saw the profile picture, something in my brain clicked, and I thought, wait, could it be? The message said something like, "Hi, Daniel. I know this must be a huge surprise, but I'm your biological mother, and I would really like to be able to talk to you if you're willing. I completely understand if you don't want to know anything about me, but I need to try. Please give me a chance to explain." I stared at the screen for like 10 minutes, unable to process what I was seeing. My hands were shaking and I felt like the floor was moving beneath my feet. The first thing I did was call Mom, obviously, and she went silent when I told her. I could hear her breathing deeply on the other end, and finally she told me, "The decision is yours, my love. If you want to meet her, I support you, but if you don't want to, that's okay too. Do what your heart tells you, but please be careful." That night I talked with Rachel for hours, going over the matter, trying to decide what to do. Part of me felt curious, like I wanted to understand why she abandoned me, what happened in her life, who this woman really was. But another part of me was furious, thinking, Does she really have the nerve to show up after 21 years like nothing happened? What can she say that justifies having left me with some neighbors and disappearing? In the end, I decided to respond. I told her I was willing to meet once to talk, but that I wasn't promising anything beyond that. She responded almost immediately, super excited, saying thank you so much, that it meant the world to her, that she had thought about me all these years. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown next Saturday at 2 in the afternoon, a public place where I would feel safe in case things got weird. I arrived 15 minutes early because I'm anxious like that, ordered a coffee I didn't drink because my stomach was churning, and sat at a table in the back waiting. Catherine arrived exactly at 2, and when I saw her walk in, I immediately recognized her eyes. They were like mine, same hazel color, same shape. She looked older than I expected, like she was about 45, I think, dressed very casually in jeans and a blue blouse, and she had this nervousness on her face that was obvious. She sat across from me, and for a few seconds, neither of us said anything. We just looked at each other, and finally she started crying and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're here. You're so big, so handsome. You look so much like your dad." She told me this whole story about how when she abandoned me, she was in a very dark place in her life, that she had problems with drugs and severe depression, that she had no job or money or way to take care of me, that she thought the best thing was to leave me where someone could find me and give me a better life. She told me that afterwards she recovered, went to rehab, got a job, married a man named Thomas like 12 years ago, and that her whole life she regretted having left me, but she was too afraid to look for me because she thought I would hate her. She cried a lot during the whole conversation, and I honestly didn't know what to feel. I was like emotionally numb, just listening to her words without being able to process well. Toward the end of the meeting, which lasted like 2 hours, Catherine started casually mentioning that things were a bit difficult financially, that Thomas had lost his job a few months ago and they were struggling with debts, and that she hoped they could have more contact with me because she really wanted to be part of my life. That last part made me uncomfortable. I don't know. There was something about the way she said it that sounded fake to me, like too rehearsed. I left there feeling confused and emotionally exhausted, told her I needed time to process everything and that I would write to her later. During the next 2 weeks, Catherine wrote to me almost every day. Super long messages about how she missed me, how she wanted to meet Rachel, how she dreamed that we could have a mother-son relationship. But she also started mentioning her money problems more often, like that they couldn't pay rent, that they needed help with medical services, things like that. One day she sent me a message directly, asking if I could lend her $1,000 for an emergency. And that's when something in my brain said, wait, this isn't right. I talked with Rachel, with Mom, with Nathan, and everyone agreed on the same thing. That this smelled really bad. That it seemed like Catherine had only looked for me because she needed something from me, not because she really wanted a relationship. So, I decided to send her a very clear message, telling her no, that I wasn't going to lend her money, and that honestly, after thinking about it a lot, I had decided I didn't want to have a relationship with her. I told her I appreciated that she had told me her side of the story, but that I already had a mother who raised me and loved me, and that she had lost the right to call herself my mother when she abandoned me 21 years ago. It was hard to write that, but I needed to establish boundaries. Her response was brutal. She told me I was ungrateful, that she had given me life, and I owed her at least a chance. That how could I be so cruel after everything she had suffered? I responded that I didn't owe her anything, blocked her number and her social media, and thought that was the end of it. How wrong I was. About 3 weeks later, I received a Facebook message from someone named Thomas Morrison. Turns out it was Catherine's husband, and he wrote apologizing for contacting me but saying he needed to talk to me urgently about something very important that Catherine hadn't told me. At first I wasn't going to respond. I thought it was another manipulation, but something in his message sounded genuine, like really worried. So I gave him my number and he called me that same night. Thomas explained to me that he didn't know I existed until literally 2 weeks ago. Catherine had never told him she had a son, never mentioned anything about her past, and he found out by accident when he checked her computer history and saw all the conversations with me. When he confronted her, she told him the whole story, and he was devastated, basically feeling like his entire marriage was a lie. But what he told me next left me frozen. He said, "Daniel, I need you to know something. Catherine is sick. She has kidney failure and needs a transplant urgently, and I think that's why she looked for you. Because she needs a compatible donor." I couldn't believe it. I asked him if he was sure, and he swore yes, that he had seen the medical papers, that Catherine had been on the waiting list for months, but the doctors had told her that finding a compatible donor was difficult and that direct family members had a higher chance of being one. Thomas told me he felt horrible about the situation, that he completely understood if I didn't want to know anything, but that he felt I deserved to know the truth. We hung up, and I sat on the couch for hours unable to move. Rachel basically had to force me to eat something because I was in total shock. The next day, I wrote a very long letter, like 2 pages, in Word, addressed to Catherine. I told her that Thomas had told me everything, that I knew about the transplant, and that it was absolutely disgusting that she had tried to manipulate me that way instead of being honest from the beginning. I explained to her that even if she had directly asked me to consider being a donor, I probably would have said no because I didn't owe her anything. But the fact that she had tried to build a fake relationship to get what she wanted was unforgivable. I made it very clear that I didn't want to hear from her again, that she should respect my decision and my space, and that if she tried to contact me again, I would take legal action. I sent it to her by email and blocked that address too. About a month passed without news, and I started to relax, thinking she had finally understood the message. But then, one day, I was at work when I received a call from my boss's number. I answered, thinking it was something urgent about the project I was working on, but it was Catherine. She had gotten the office number, asked for me, and when my boss transferred the call to me, she started begging me to please listen to her, that her situation was getting worse, that the doctors had told her she needed the transplant soon, or she was going to die. I hung up immediately and went to talk to my boss to briefly explain the situation, asked him to please not transfer any more calls from unknown numbers asking for me. But that wasn't all. Catherine started sending me emails from different accounts every time I blocked one. The messages were increasingly desperate and manipulative. She told me that if I refused to help her, I was basically killing her, that how could I live with that guilt, that someday I would regret it when she died. Some emails came from Thomas too, begging that I at least consider getting the compatibility tests, that I didn't have to commit to anything, but please give them that hope. Rachel convinced me to go to therapy, to process. All this because, honestly, it was affecting me a lot. I wasn't sleeping well. I was irritable. I couldn't concentrate at work. I started seeing Dr. Williams, a therapist who specializes in family trauma, and he helped me understand that what Catherine was doing was pure emotional abuse, that she was using my guilt and my empathy as weapons against me, and that I had every right to set boundaries and protect myself without feeling bad about it. With Dr. Williams's help, I wrote another email, this time much more direct and legal in tone, explaining exactly what was and wasn't acceptable, demanding that they cease all contact immediately, and warning that if they continued harassing me, I would seek a restraining order. I sent it to both Catherine and Thomas from my personal email account and from my work email so there would be a record. Catherine's response arrived 2 days later, but this time it was different. It wasn't begging, it was pure anger. She called me selfish, told me that she knew I made good money in my tech job and that I could perfectly well afford to donate a kidney without it affecting me, that it was my moral obligation as her son to help her. Then, in the same email, she completely changed her tone and started offering me money. She told me that if I donated the kidney, she and Thomas would pay me $50,000, that it was all they had in savings, but that it was worth it to save her life. I didn't respond to that email. Instead, I printed it and showed it to a lawyer my boss recommended. The lawyer told me that technically offering money for an organ was illegal, and that I had grounds for a harassment lawsuit and possibly extortion if I wanted to go that route. I decided to wait a bit before taking formal legal action, because honestly, I just wanted it all to end and for them to leave me alone. But Catherine didn't stop. She started looking for me on all my social media, creating fake accounts so she could comment on my posts. She found Rachel's Instagram and sent her messages telling her that I was a heartless monster, that how could she marry someone so cruel who would let his own mother die. Rachel, who is incredible, didn't respond and just blocked the accounts, but she was scared by the level of obsession Catherine was showing. Then Catherine escalated everything to a level I never imagined. One day, my boss called me into his office with a very serious face and asked me if there was anything I needed to tell him about my personal life. Turns out Catherine had called the company, had talked to human resources, and had told them that I was harassing her, that I had stolen money from her, that I was addicted to drugs and a danger to the company. All completely false. Lies specifically designed to destroy my reputation and my career. I had to sit down with my boss and with the human resources director for 2 hours, showing them all the emails, all the messages, all the evidence that Catherine was the one harassing me, not the other way around. Thank God my boss believed me and supported me completely, but the damage was done, because now the whole department knew about this horrible family drama, and I felt humiliated and exposed. That same afternoon, I formally hired the lawyer, and we started the procedures for a restraining order and a defamation lawsuit. The lawyer explained to me that we had a solid case because there was clear evidence of sustained harassment, false accusations, and damage to my professional reputation. Meanwhile, I decided to do something Dr. Williams had suggested as part of my healing process. I wrote my complete story, from the abandonment to everything that had happened in recent months, and published it on my personal blog and on my social media. I didn't mention Catherine's real name or identifying details, but I told the whole truth honestly and raw. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people shared my story, sent me messages of support, told me I had done the right thing by establishing boundaries and protecting myself. The restraining order was approved like 3 weeks ago, and the defamation lawsuit is in process. Catherine and Thomas are prohibited from contacting me by any means, approaching me, Rachel, my family, or my workplace. The judge was very clear that any violation of the order would result in serious legal consequences. But of course, Catherine couldn't just accept it. 2 weeks ago, on a Saturday morning, Rachel and I were having breakfast when there was a knock on the door. Rachel went to open it because I was still in my pajamas, and suddenly I heard her say loudly, "You can't be here. You need to leave now." I ran over, and there were Catherine and Thomas standing at the building entrance. She crying dramatically, and he trying to explain that they just wanted to talk for 5 minutes. I told them they had a restraining order and that they were violating it at that very moment, that they should leave immediately, or I would call the police. Catherine started screaming that I was her only hope, that please have compassion, that she had given me life and now I was letting her die. The neighbors started coming out to see what was happening. It was absolute chaos. I called 911, while Rachel recorded everything with her phone in case we needed the evidence later. The police arrived in like 10 minutes. I explained the situation to them, showed them the restraining order on my phone, and they took Catherine and Thomas away. The officers told me this was going to count as a formal violation of the order and that there would be legal consequences. My lawyer confirmed later that with this violation, the lawsuit case was strengthened quite a bit. He also told me that Catherine would probably face fines and possibly jail time if she kept trying to contact me. Part of me feels bad about that because at the end of the day she's sick and desperate, but the bigger part of me knows I have no other choice, that I need to protect myself and the people I love. 3 days ago, I had a session with Dr. Williams where we talked about the guilt I still feel sometimes. I told him there are moments, especially at night when I can't sleep, when I wonder if I'm being too hard, if I should at least get the compatibility tests just to know. And he reminded me of something very important. He said, "Daniel, donating an organ isn't like lending money or doing a simple favor. It's major surgery with real risks to your health. It's something that changes your body forever. And nobody, absolutely nobody, has the right to demand that of you or make you feel bad for refusing, especially someone who abandoned you and then tried to manipulate you. Now I'm focusing on moving forward with my life. Rachel and I are still planning the wedding, although we decided to postpone the date a few months until all this legal drama is completely resolved. Mom has been an incredible pillar through all this, calling me almost every day to see how I am, reminding me that she's proud of me for standing firm on my boundaries. Nathan has also been super present. He even offered to stay at my apartment for a week after the incident with the police, just so Rachel and I would feel safer. Work has been a positive distraction. I threw myself completely into a new project that requires all my concentration and that helps me not think so much about everything that happened. My colleagues have been understanding and respectful, Nobody asks me uncomfortable questions or mentions the subject unless I bring it up, which I really appreciate. The last update I have is that my lawyer called me yesterday to tell me that Catherine and Thomas are looking to reach an out-of-court settlement. Basically, they want me to drop the lawsuit, and they promise never to contact me again. They would sign legal documents committing to that. I still haven't decided if I'm going to accept or if I'm going to go ahead with the trial. The lawyer gave me until next week to think about it. Yesterday, Rachel asked me how I really feel about all this, and I told her the truth, that I feel tired but also free in some way. For months, I was carrying this question of what happened with my biological mother, why she abandoned me, who she really was, and now I have all those answers, even though they're not the ones I would have wanted to hear. I know Catherine is a deeply selfish and manipulative person who only looked for me because she needed me, not because she loved me. And knowing that, as painful as it is, allows me to close that chapter completely and move forward without doubts or unanswered questions. This morning I was drinking coffee on the balcony, watching the sunrise, and I was thinking about how this whole experience has taught me something important about what family really means. It's not blood that makes you family, it's love, sacrifice, constant presence day after day. Mom chose me when I was 4 years old and loved me unconditionally for 21 years without expecting anything in return. That's my real mother. That's my real family. Catherine only shared a biological link with me, but that doesn't mean anything without everything else that makes a relationship real and meaningful. I don't know what's going to happen with Catherine's health. Honestly, I try not to think too much about it because when I do, I start to feel that guilt again. That voice in my head that says, maybe I should do something. But then I remember everything she did to me. All the lies, all the manipulation, the attempt to destroy my career, and that guilt disappears. Nobody has the right to demand a piece of your body, no matter who they are or how desperate they are. My kidneys are mine, my body is mine, and I decide what I do with it. Last week, Nathan came to dinner with us, and at one point in the night, he told me something that stuck with me. He said, "Cousin, you've spent your whole life feeling grateful for the family you have, but I want you to know that we're also grateful to have you. You're our brother, our son, our family, and there's nothing I would change about how things turned out. And that's all I need, I guess, knowing that I have people who love me for who I am, not for what they can get from me."